So, what happens when a business that's been around for over 50 years, one that's built on traditional artistry, runs headfirst into a very modern problem? Well, they solve it with some very modern tools. Today, we're going to dive into the story of how a handmade carpet company used artificial intelligence to fix a massive, massive drain on its profits.
Meet Champo Carpets. They're based in Bhadoi, India, which is one of the world's most famous carpet weaving hubs. And these guys are absolute masters of their craft. For decades, they've been creating these incredible, intricate floor coverings for major stores and big companies all across the globe.
But back in 2019, they had a number that was pretty much keeping them up at night, 20%. And what was that? Well, that was their sample-to-order conversion rate. Think about that. For every 5 sample carpets they painstakingly made and sent out to a client, only 1 turned into an actual sale. And that was a huge problem.
So let's break this problem down, which brings us to our first section here, a costly mismatch. We're talking about a fundamental disconnect between what Champo is offering and what their clients were actually looking to buy.
Now, that 20% rate, it wasn't just low in a vacuum. It was way, way below the industry average of 35%. So that means their competitors were landing sales way more often. This wasn't just a small issue. It was a major disadvantage, and it was hitting their bottom line hard.
And you really have to understand, creating a single sample isn't like printing a flyer. It's a huge undertaking. A handmade carpet goes through this entire complex process, from design to getting the right materials, dyeing the yarn, the incredibly skilled weaving, and then a whole bunch of finishing steps. The whole thing can take anywhere from 3 weeks to 3 months.
So here's the crucial point. Every single one of those samples that didn't become an order was a massive expense. This quote right here just spells it out. Weaving costs doubled, raw material and dyeing costs tripled, finishing costs went up 2.5 times. Why? Because of all the inefficiencies of making just a single one-off sample. They were literally burning money on carpets that nobody was buying.
So how on earth could they solve this? Well, it turns out the solution wasn't in some new design or a flashy marketing plan. Nope, the answer was already inside their own company. And that brings us to Section 2, the untapped data goldmine they were sitting on.
The crazy thing is, the foundation for this fix was actually put in place years earlier. Back in 2017, the company had the foresight to set up an enterprise resource planning system, an ERP. Just think of it like a central digital brain that was quietly recording every single detail of their business, from production to sales, for years and years.
And what kind of data are we talking about? Oh, everything. Which of their 45 B2B customers was buying, what country they were in, the exact type of carpet, its shape, its size, and of course, how much money it brought in. It was a perfect, detailed digital history of their entire business.
All right, so with this data finally unlocked, they could start to figure out what their customers truly wanted. And the initial analysis? Well, it revealed some incredibly clear patterns.
First up, geography. The data showed that the United States wasn't just a market for them, it was the market. I mean, with over $26 million in revenue, it absolutely dwarfed every other country they sold to. This was, by a huge margin, their most important relationship.
And if we zoom in even closer, it gets even more specific. Within that massive U.S. market, just one customer, codenamed TGT, was responsible for over $11 million in sales. The next biggest customer wasn't even close, less than a third of that. So boom, just like that, they knew exactly who their most valuable client was.
So they had the where and the who. This slide tells us the what. The most popular product by far was hand-tufted carpets. So a pretty clear picture is starting to emerge, right? They should really be focusing on hand-tufted carpets for their key clients in the United States.
But analyzing the past is one thing. The real magic happens when you use all that data to predict the future. And this is where things get really cool. This is where machine learning enters the story.
So they decided to use something called a classification model. Now, that might sound super complex, but the idea is actually pretty simple. You feed the algorithm all of your old data, every sample you ever sent out, and you tell it which ones turned into a sale and which ones didn't. The AI then crunches all that and learns the hidden patterns to predict for any new sample, is this one going to be a yes or is it going to be a no?
And this right here is one way it actually thinks. It's called a decision tree. You can kind of think of it as the AI playing a game of 20 questions. It asks things like, is the carpet area less than 40 square feet? If yes, it goes down one path.
Is the carpet a knotted type? If no, it goes down another. By following all these little branches, it can figure out the probability of a sale with some surprising accuracy. It turns all that messy data into a simple set of rules.
So, after all this digging and analysis, what was the result? Well, the AI gave them clear, actionable insights that would completely transform their sales strategy. And that leads us to our final section, smarter sales woven by AI.
And check out some of the fascinating patterns it found. For instance, samples sent to Belgium, high conversion rate, but samples sent to Italy, low. Knotted and Dury-style carpets were good bets. But here's a weird one. Standard rectangular carpets were actually less likely to convert. I mean, these are the kinds of subtle, counterintuitive insights that are almost impossible for a person to spot on their own.
So what was the big idea? The final recommendation that tied everything together? It was this: stop guessing what to send to clients. Instead, build a recommender system.
In other words, they needed to build a tool that's powered by all this data and acts like a personalized shopper. You know, it's just like how Netflix or Amazon knows what you want to watch or buy next. It's a system that can look at a client, like TGT in the USA, and say, hey, based on their history and our predictions, here are the 3 exact samples you should send them for the highest chance of a sale.
And that really brings us to our final thought. Champo Carpets managed to weave together decades of artistry with cutting-edge data science to solve their most expensive problem. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other companies, maybe even your own, are sitting on a hidden goldmine of data, just waiting for the right key to unlock it?